Hey guys, I've been very disappointed with the tips videos that have been coming out for Dyson Sphere Program. They've just been regurgitating what you're told in the tutorial anyway. So here's 10 not blindingly obvious tips for Dyson Sphere Program. Okay, time for me to put my money where my mouth is. We're going to start off with conveyor belts, and sometimes you find yourself trying to get into very, very tight spots. And unfortunately, the conveyor belts, when you're trying to jump over other objects, force you to go quite high and quite long when you're making bridges. So if we take this up one level, you have to be flat before you can place it. And then you've got to do the same thing on the other side. You've got to be flat before you can place it. So it means that you end up with this very long bridge. There's no way that we could hop over here. That's just impossible, right? Yeah, except that if you put in the first part of the bridge and then you delete a couple of sections like this, and then you finish the bridge the way that you would have in the first place, like this, you can get a much shorter bridge, and it's actually a half height bridge. So you can put this in. You need to be 2 squares back from where you want to jump over. Lift it up, take it across till you get flat, and then delete a couple of sections, boom, boom, and then join it up to whatever you want to join it up to. Oh, look at that. How tight and tiny is that? And of course, then, if you want to, you can stack stuff over the top of it. But, just a point, you do have to put these in afterwards. You can't put them in before, you can't slot this in between 2 existing conveyor belts. So you'd have to take out a section of the top one, put this in, and then put the top one back in. But that, I think that is a great tip. That has saved me a lot of hassle trying to get into little tight spaces. Okay, this next tip it's not that useful. I just think it's really cool that it exists. Let's say I want to lay another conveyor belt alongside this one, and when I try and put it in, it goes the wrong way. Well, okay, yeah, I could lay it in 2 sections, but you can also just press the R key. I think it's so cool that that is even in the game. Next up, let's talk about the splitter. Now, the first thing that's not blindingly obvious about the splitter is that when you place it, these options come up over here, one of which is tab switch pattern, which it's not blindingly obvious what that means. What it does mean is that there are 3 different types of splitter. You've got the regular splitter, and then you've got this pattern, which is, basically all going in the same direction on 2 different levels. And then you've got this one, which is, yeah, you can see what that does. Now, these also stack, right? And you can stack them in, like, all kinds of arrangements. Now, you can do some very, very cool things with these. Now, that is not the only thing that is not blindingly obvious about the splitters. And over here, I've got an example. When you put a splitter in, there are no options on it. And it's very easy to miss the fact that there are options. When you hook up the actual belts to it, then you suddenly get these options. You get the options to prioritize what's going to be the main input for this, and then you also get the opportunity to select a filter on one of the outputs. So, for example, if I select iron on this one, now I've set up a couple of mixed lines here. So if I just hook them up, I think you should see an interesting result here. So we've got 2 mixed lines going in. Oh my lord! They come out all nicely sorted. I'm sure people can come up with some interesting things to do with that. So there you go. That's the splitter. As the sun sets slowly in the west, let's talk for a minute about power. So, how do you get your power? Where should you be getting your power from? Well, early game, you want to be using wind power, and then move on a little bit later to getting solar power. But how should you lay it out for best advantage? Well, I'm standing kind of very close to what I think is the best way to get your early game power. And it's this arrangement. This is an equatorial power belt. Now, first of all, how the hell do you know where your equator is? Well, if you go into your construction mode, and especially if you go into surface formation mode, you'll see that there are these lines, and there are some smaller than others. And the biggest ones show you where exactly the equator is. And if we go up to the pole, you can see that these lines meet at the pole, and it's very easy here to see which are kind of the four main quadrants. And then if you just fly down one of these, the first strong line that you get to will be the equator, and here it is. Okay, so what's so awesome about setting this up the way that I've set it up? Well, the thing about solar power is great. It produces 300 megawatts, and it produces that 24 hours a day. The problem is you have to space them out, which is wasteful of space. Solar power is great. It produces 350 did I say megawatts? I meant kilowatts. Produces 350 kilowatts of power, but the problem is you only get that half of the day because you don't get any power at night. But if you can combine them like this, then you kind of get the best of both worlds. You maximize your usage of space, and you get the maximum power out of any square footage of your real estate. And real estate later in the game becomes quite precious. So let's go round, and you'll see, look, this is where the sun is going down. I love seeing this. Now, the power output from this is consistent because you've got solar panels all the way around the planet. Half of them will always be working, right? And your wind power is always working. So, yeah. So how much do you get from an arrangement like this? Well, this one produces around 500 megawatts of power, which will keep you going for quite a while in the early game. And this is important because mineral resources are finite. They're limited. You've only got so much of it. So, for example, this coal over here, once I've used that, it's gone. Now, okay, there is a great big galaxy out there that we can go and get more stuff. But it's a good idea to try and conserve these resources as much as possible. Your oil and hydrogen, for example, are unlimited. You've got an infinite supply of those. So, as well as putting in this initially, you can also use some of these babies. Some of these thermal power stations. Hook these up to some oil refineries churning out hydrogen, and you're going to be producing loads and loads of power. Now, you can chain these together. Just make sure that you use fast enough sorters to get enough from one machine to the next. So if you can chain up to about 10 of these together. In fact, if you've got upgraded Mark III sorters, you could probably chain a lot more than that together. So there you go. That's my recommendations for early power. I will say the game kind of steers you towards doing a Dyson swarm of solar sails. I would hold off on that. You don't need to do that. Focus on getting your cubes done, right? Once you've really got your cubes done, then you can start thinking about your Dyson swarm and eventually your Dyson Sphere. Okay, that kind of leads me on, the talking about the finite resources, to the next tip. So let's talk about research for a second. What should you focus on first? Well, to be honest, when you're looking at the technologies, it's pretty obvious. Go for your electromagnetic matrix, which is the blue cube, and then you're going to be moving on to the red cubes, the energy matrix. Then you're going to be pushing for the yellow cubes, the structure matrix, and then onto the purple cubes, the information matrix, and finally the gravity matrix, and then the white ones right at the end. That's pretty obvious, but it's worth mentioning in the upgrades, there are a couple of things right down here at the bottom, which are kind of easily overlooked. As soon as you get red cubes, so you've got blue and red cubes, you want to start doing these, the vanes utilization. These reduce the amount of ore that's consumed by each mining operation. This will make your resources last longer. So as soon as you get these, start doing them. And then you can move on as soon as you get the yellow cubes, start doing that one. And I think you get then the purple, and you can do that one. And I think maybe the next one as well. Yes, you can do the next one as well. As soon as you get purple cubes, though, don't do this one. Do these, the research speed. You can do 3 of these as soon as you get the purple. You can do this one, and you can do the second one, and you can do the third one. And that will speed up researching this one. Also worth mentioning that if you take my advice on the previous tip, then lay off the solar sails and the ray transmissions as long as possible. You can put your research into much more useful things. Okay, this next one, it's really quick, but it was a life changer for me when I found this out, and it was pointed out to me by one of my subs during a live stream. Okay, your inventory. You can sort your inventory. There are 2 ways to do it. You can either control click on an empty space, or you can click on this button and it will sort your inventory. Not only will it sort your inventory, but it will condense your inventory. So like down here I've got a load of deuterium all in ones. One click and boom, it just puts them all together. Now this is really handy and useful, but also it can save you some real problems. Once your inventory is full, if you create anything, it will disappear. It will be destroyed. So yeah, make sure you sort your inventory often. Keep a bit of space. Okay, this next one might be a little controversial because some people will say, well, that's blindingly obvious. Foundations. When you're laying foundations, you've got this 2x2 square here. Now, there will be people out there who will go, yeah, look, just read it here. It tells you. Yeah, but you know what? Some of us miss these things, and I did. And it was on a live stream again that somebody pointed out that the plus and the minus keys make this area bigger, which can be a real time saver. God, when I found that one out, I was like, oh my God, that is a great tip. Now, something that seemed obvious to me, but isn't blindingly obvious to a lot of people, is where you get soil from. Right, because when you try and put this down, it says will consume. Well, this will consume 14,900 soil, and down here it tells you how much soil you've got. But how do you get it? Well, basically, if you look at the terrain, and this is going to be hard because I have raped my planet for soil when I was building this because I had to find a lot of soil for this. But if you look around, you will find areas that are slightly raised. They're not they're not massively raised. It's like just like this, okay? And there are a couple of ways you can go about getting this soil. You can either use your foundations, so just get your foundations. You only need like the smallest one, and to put one, say there, and there would get you virtually all of the soil from this surrounding area, because it takes not just from this cell but from the cells around it. It drops it all down. But the other way, if you don't happen to have any foundations and you want a little bit of soil, or you don't want to use a lot of foundations, you can see I've gone around like placing foundations in strips all over the place to get a lot of soil when I was putting this in. The other way you can do it is just drop a building down. You will get, like, when you just start your base and start putting buildings down, you will get some soil. But yeah, you can use you could throw in some storages like this, and you can see over here it's telling me that I'm picking up soil. Yeah, so yeah, you could do it that way. Yeah, I'm glad that I was able to share this one, because I got several comments about this on my videos. Okay, this next one is about charging your mech. This is the wireless power tower, and you can put one of these down and it will start to charge your mech. You can see the animation there showing that you're charging your mech. That's not the tip. I mean, it is a good tip to tell you use these, it's also a good tip to say, you know what, when you're building something, like if I was building this, throw one or several around the place so that you can be charging up and not wasting fuel while you're building. And then when you're done, just pick them up, because you can just pick it up, go somewhere else and put it down there. This is actually the tip, though, the real tip, which and I'm sure many people made a bad assumption that you could only charge from one of these. Oh no, you can actually charge cumulatively. So if you put in an array of like 9 of these, as close as you can get them together, there, and there, and then if you stand in the middle, just look. Oh my god, that's charging fast. And bear in mind that I've got all, well, I haven't got all of them, but I've got most of the research done, so I can actually store like a lot of power. It takes a lot to charge me up. Look how quickly that's charged up. I have to say, when I found that out, I was like, oh yeah, that's something that people need to know. Let's talk about storage for a second. I've got 3 very quick tips on the subject of storage. So storage. First of all, it stacks. I'm sure you probably realise that there are lots of things in the game that stack now, so you'll be checking those out. That's fine. But one thing that you may overlook is this capacity for automation. It allows you to limit how much will be automatically put into a storage by sorters from like transferring in from a conveyor belt, for example. So yeah, if you're making, I don't know, some kind of expensive building, you may only want a few of them, right? So you might say, oh, just make me 2 stacks, and then you can use the rest of the area for like personal storage. So you can put stuff in there, but the game won't use that. It'll just use the open space. Okay, so that's that. What else? Oh yeah, I remember. He said. Yeah, buffering. Now this is just kind of a general gameplay tip. I think it's a good idea that when you're making things, that you put in some storage and allow yourself to build up a little bit of a buffer. So for example, I'm not doing research at the moment. Okay, now without this storage here, I wouldn't be manufacturing extra red cubes. But by putting this in, it allows me to build up a buffer so that when I actually start doing some research, I've got a whole load all ready to go, which means that I can process, I can actually put in more researchers than I have got production capacity for, because I've saved some up in between. And you can apply this to basically anything that you're doing. If you're producing, send it through a buffer. And the best way to do it is to have like 1 going in and 2 coming out. So here I've got 1 going in and 2 coming out, which means that if the spare capacity, it'll load up. But once there's a demand for it, it'll unload twice as fast as it's loading, so you'll get rid of that extra. So yeah, limits, buffers, stacking, storage is kind of awesome. Okay, it's the 10th and final tip, so this has got to be a good one. And my 10th and final tip is the logistics station, and using this to basically avoid having to build like main buses and have loads of spaghetti everywhere. If I go over to my main base, I am in the process of replacing a lot of this spaghetti that I've got with these logistics stations. Now there are 2 types, and I'll talk about the interplanetary ones in a little bit. I'm just going to focus on this one at the moment. This is the planetary logistics station, and basically it's here to move stuff from one place to another, so that you don't have to have great big long conveyor belts everywhere. So, for example, here I'm manufacturing circuit boards, which needs iron ingots and copper ingots. So, just over here, I have a little facility which is producing iron. And then that iron, those iron ingots, are being put into this logistics station. And it's just a case of selecting like what you want to go in here. So for, I could say silicon, for example, and then you want this set to supply. You can either set a station to supply or demand any particular product. And like these planetary ones can deal with 3 products. So yeah, that's how you set this up. So you set this up, supply, and then I've got another one which is just over there. You can just see it, and that one is doing copper. Okay, and then we have this station over here, which is completely independent. This could be anywhere on the planet, and all it's doing is receiving, so it's demanding the iron and the copper, and then what I do is I take that, I process it, I produce the circuit boards, send them into the planetary logistics station, set that to supply, and then that can be used anywhere in any process. And in actual fact, if we go over here, I'll show you where it's being used. It's a temporary, because I haven't reworked this bit yet, but I found over here, originally I was stealing some spare supply when I wasn't processing my research cubes. I was using them over here to make processors, but I was finding that it was a pain every time I started researching. This would dry up, and you can see this is dried up at the moment because I'm still building up my buffers. So all I did was throw in a tower and asked it to demand circuit boards, and then yeah, this is feeding into here. It means that you can just get rid of all your spaghetti. So now I can actually rip out this particular one, which is, and it's amazing how quickly you can create spaghetti if you're not careful. So there you go. Now let's talk briefly. Oh, there's one thing I need to show you on here, because this is not blindingly obvious. When you're taking whatever it is, I've got circuit boards in here, but like whatever you're taking out of this tower, when you put your conveyor belt down, it's really not blindingly obvious. But if you mouse over where the conveyor belt meets the tower, you will get this, and this is where you select what product you want on this line. So if I select circuit board, then the circuit boards will come out. Hurrah! I'm glad I remembered to show you that, because that is one of the things in the game which is really not blindingly obvious. Okay, let's go. No, it's fine. I was going to talk about the drones, but I'll talk about the drones when we look at the interstellar logistics station, which is not only interplanetary, so shipping resources from one planet to another, but you can ship it interstellar from one solar system to another. So yeah, it works basically the same. I've got one of these on another planet, which is loaded up with these 3 products, and then they're shipped to here. But you can also supply this using the planetary logistics stations by setting local supply, and then setting these to demand, and then this will ship them out using drones. So on the planet, all your shipping is done by drones. Between planets, it's done by these logistics vessels. Now, one final tip to tell you about, and that is, if you start to use them, right, bear in mind that in your research, you can upgrade them. Down here, you've got the logistics carrier engine, which increases the drone flight speed. But you've also got this, the carrier capacity, which increases the carrying capacity. And then if you go up a couple of tiers, you find that it also increases the amount that can be carried by the logistics vessels on the interplanetary routes. It is also worth bearing in mind that when you start going to other solar systems, you need to be careful that your ships are capable of warping there, because they will try and deliver stuff. If they haven't got the ability to warp, so they haven't got warpers, they will try and do the slow boat to China and just get there on their own, which will take them like almost literally forever. So bear that in mind when you're setting these up. like to other solar systems. Right, guys, that is it. That's my 10 not blindingly obvious tips for the awesome, and I do mean that, if you haven't checked out the game, for God's sake, check it out. The awesome Dyson Sphere Program. Guys, thanks very much. Maybe hit that like button if you enjoyed any of the tips. Maybe even subscribe for more of these videos. And I'll catch you for the next one. Peace out.